No. Oh.
How you going?
Yeah, good. Did you get one of those for me?
No, I didn't.
I don't know that I want a whole one. I'll just steal yours.
Yeah, of course you will. Well, g'day. We've just got ourselves back out into the bush, back where we like being, after the metropolis of Melbourne. We did a couple of days in Melbourne, and while we were there, we went and had a sneak peek at our caravan, which is getting built at the moment, which is very exciting.
It is very exciting, but that's not what this video is about, is it?
No, more of that coming up in future videos. We're looking forward to showing you our new van. But yeah, this video we thought it'd be a good time to talk about a few of the things we did in our previous caravan that we built, or Titanium built it. We just picked what we wanted in it. And there was a few things in that we did that I'm not going to go ahead and say they were firsts for the industry or anything like that, but they were certainly things that you don't see or aren't as common in the caravan industry.
Yeah, and I think for us, once it's all well and good to like show people when you first get it, but what people really want to know is how did it perform over the last year and a half, and what we liked about it, what were the pros, what were the cons, and what were the things that you need to consider if you wanted to do something similar, or whether the risk paid off, basically. So that's what we're really going to go through in this video, isn't it? Pros and cons.
100%.
And would we do it again, what we would consider, or what we would change if we were doing it next time, because really that's what we're here to do, is just share information, share our experience, and it is just our opinion, but that's all we can give you. So.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we just haven't had a chance to sit down and do any of these videos, so we thought put them all in one spot, in one place, because these are probably the things that we get asked the most about is, so what are we talking about? So one of the things we did was a dishwasher. One of the things we did was a different style of table leg for the interior table, so it was a swing away style leg. One of the things we did was
a desalinator.
A desalinator, which was probably the one we get the most requests for, so we'll definitely touch on that one. We also did a huge off-grid power system, and I don't want to go too much into this because it's a whole topic on its own, but I do want to touch a little bit on big power systems, because it's becoming more and more common for people to have big off-grid power systems. And
completely gasless as well. So it's the only source of power for the caravan. And the other one was the Under-bunk aircon.
Yep.
So we removed the rooftop air conditioning unit and put in a ducted Under-bunk one. And lots of people were really curious about that as well.
Yep.
So let's dive into it. We're going to go through all of those. Are you going to pop this in chapters in case there's only one thing that people
we'll split it up. So down below in the timeline, if you're only interested in one or two of the different things that we're going to talk about, go and look at those. But yeah, like Liz said, we're going to go through pros, cons, and then our verdict. Would we do it again? Would we not? Or what would we consider if we were considering doing it again? And which of these 5 things are we taking into the next caravan that's being built at the moment? So we'll go through all that. Let's dive into it.
Let's go. Okay, let's talk about the dishwasher. So at the beginning of our last caravan build, it's probably important to note that Titanium didn't install the dishwasher for us. They just provisioned the hole for the dishwasher. The dishwasher that we purchased was from Bunnings. It's the Devanti 6-place setting one. And the reason we wanted the Bunnings one was basically because we knew that if it broke, we'd be able to replace it along the way somewhere.
Well, it's the same dishwasher. It's not that it's a Bunnings dishwasher. It's the same Devanti. If you search on Google, Devanti 6-place dishwasher, there's about 20 different places that sell them. But we'd have bought it through Bunnings because we'd have Australia-wide network of if it failed or whatever. Because that's the biggest concern we had is it's a domestic dishwasher. It's not an RV-specific dishwasher. So no one was really doing them at the time. And they're a bit more common now. But back then, no one was really putting dishwashers commonly in caravans, and there wasn't really an RV specific one we could get.
Yes.
So we just bought this one and hoped that it would survive all the rough roads and the corrugations and everything like that, and it did. It did really, really well. We had, I think we only ever had an error throw up on it, and we just turned it off, turned it back on again, and it worked perfectly ever since. It did a great job of washing the dishes. It fit enough dishes that it was worth it. Like it was a big enough dishwasher that was worth having in there. Because the big thing that Liz wanted, and well, we both wanted, but in Liz in particular, was somewhere to hide the dishes.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my pet peeves travelling Australia is that you're always saving water, and that means usually that the dishes just stack up for the whole day. You don't have a big kitchen, so it just takes up so much bench room having dishes left lying out. And this is basically a cupboard for the dirty dishes. And with the new van too, we had a huge power system and large water capacity to to test it, basically, like to see, does the concept work? Can it be done? What are the pros? What are the cons? So after a year and a half with that van, what would you say the biggest pros and cons are?
So the power, everyone asks how much water does it use. That's not actually your biggest consideration. It uses about 7.5 litres per load. So we don't reckon it was using much different. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it a water saving device, but it definitely, I don't think, uses more water than doing hand dishes. It does use a lot of power though. You do need quite a decent power system. I never really was able, it was difficult to work out exactly how much it used per cycle as far as power was concerned, because there's always other things running in the van and things like that, but it will draw a fair bit of power. Sorry if you can hear all the people in the background. We're surrounded by other campers at the moment. But yeah, it does use quite a lot of power. I would guess somewhere in the realms of 60 to 80 amps at 12 volt to run through a full cycle. And it does depend on which cycle you use and things like that.
I was going to say, so we had the options with that one was there was a 30-minute quick wash, which wasn't the best wash. The best wash was definitely, best value for money was the eco setting, which was an hour and a half, and it used the least amount of water, but more power. So it was a compromise, and I think for me personally, I would use 7 litres of water if I was to do 2 sets of dishes. So if you did like a lunchtime wash and a dinner wash, I'd easily use 3 litres if you like filling the sink this much. So
yeah. Now the other downsides are, or the other cons are, the space that it takes up. It does. There's no trade-off. You're not saving having anything. It's not like you can do without a sink by having a dishwasher. So it does take up space. I mean, for us, we didn't have a microwave or an oven, so it sort of took up what space you would normally have for that. And we reckon it was worth it for that because it gets used multiple times a day, or at the very least once a day. Oven and microwave we rarely would use. The other consideration is the weight. I think you'd have to look up the specs, but I think 15 to 20 kilos, something like that.
It weighed. Yeah.
The next consideration is going to be whether your manufacturer will install it or whether you're going to have to do it DIY. It is a relatively easy DIY install, but you do need to make sure there's power available and water and drainage and everything for it, which Titanium provisioned for it for us as part of the build. If you can get your manufacturer to do it, then that'd be obviously the best way to go.
And the main reason they didn't want to put it in our van was for warranty purposes, because anything that any manufacturer puts in that van, they have to warrant. So
we've got a video coming up about warranties too. So stick around for that.
Open a massive can of worms with that one, but that was their reasoning for it. But if we aftermarket fit it, it's our warranty basically. So that was a nice compromise, but there are manufacturers that are doing it from factory now, I
including
believe.
Titanium. Overall we'd definitely do it again. It was well worth it, we think, and it really did just a massive time saver. Keeps the van looking neat and tidy because your dirty dishes are in there. We travelled with dishes in there. Not sure I'd recommend that, but it did work okay. They all survived.
It does wash while you're driving.
You can wash while you're driving. Overall we would definitely do it again. We're not putting it in our next van at this point because it won't fit, essentially. Yeah,
so because with the narrow body van, the cabinetry is a little bit narrower, and then there are no specific models we can get that are narrow bench spaces that are still a decent size and worth it.
That
in
will
our
work.
opinion.
No,
there are RV ones, but they're much smaller.
Yeah, we are looking at other options, and we'll find something, and we'll let you know if and when we do that we can make fit in the hybrid. But at this stage, unfortunately, a dishwasher is going to be off the list.
Just to sum up, if I had the choice between an oven, a microwave, and a dishwasher wins hands down every single day of the year. If you've got the space for it, if you've got the power for it, go for it. It is amazing. You will love it. You will not regret it. I will just say, Simon did a DIY install on that dishwasher, and we'll leave a link to that video here if you want to know how he did it.
Okay, so air conditioning. Traditionally on a Caravan, it's a big unit that sits up on the roof of your van and has just the outlet that runs on the ceiling inside. We decided to try and do something different with our last van, mainly because we wanted to maximize solar space, and we went with the Truma, what they call an under-bunk aircon, which basically just means it sits on the floor of the van in a storage compartment or something like that, and runs from down there, and then he's ducted into various locations in the van. The Truma one comes with 3 ducts for that. So the biggest pro to the underbunk is to free up the roof space, and that's probably the primary reason that most people would do it.
Yeah, it's also lighter.
It is lighter, and that weight that it does have is down lower, which makes a big difference as well.
Depending where you put it, like we didn't put it exactly over the axles, but it was close to the axles.
But nice and low is the big thing, yeah.
They're the main pros, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's also, it's much, much
I was
quieter.
going to say, it's quieter. And a lot of people asked us questions about how noisy it was. And I didn't really understand people's questions about how noisy an aircon was until we've now got the one we've currently got, which is significantly noisier.
Which is a Dometic fresh jet, which is garbage. But it's, look, the under-bunk quietness was something we didn't know about. It was kind of like, we didn't find out about it until after we got it.
Yeah,
We
you didn't
realise
appreciate how good it was until it was gone.
Yeah, we didn't. But yeah, it is significantly quieter. There are
Okay.
some big downsides and or considerations and downsides, I suppose, to it though.
I was going to say, we haven't put one in our next van. Why not? What were the big considerations? Why didn't we do it?
Well, this is where I guess, because it's going to depend on what layout and what style of van you got, whether it's a good idea or not. Going with the hybrid that we're going with next, storage space is already a little bit more limited than in a traditional caravan, and it just, the layout and the way it's structured with a big outdoor kitchen and things like that, I didn't want to sacrifice internal storage space, and we were able to get a decent amount of solar up on the roof without it, so we decided to stick with the rooftop for this one. Jury's out, we'll see whether we regret that or not, but
Yep.
I think, look, we loved the ducted aircon, the under-bunk, mainly for the noise, but there are some other things to consider, like don't do a DIY install.
I was going to say,
like we did.
retrofitting it was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
An absolute nightmare. And I only watched that footage. I wasn't the actual person doing it.
It was a huge job.
Huge.
And there's compromises, because you really want to get the ducts up nice and high. The higher they
effective.
are, the better it's going to work, the more efficient the aircon's going to be, and the better it's going to work. And doing that aftermarket is really, really difficult. So if you don't have a manufacturer that's going to do it for you at the build time, or unless you're doing a major renovation to a caravan anyway, and you can sort of plan for it in that,
not worth it in our opinion.
that's probably not going to be worth it. Yeah.
And you're going to pay more if you're paying someone else to do it. Like, it's going to cost you a lot more just because of the amount of time in labour that it takes to install.
Yeah.
You're not going to save any money. The other thing with that unit is that we had a 19-foot standard width van, and that was the largest capacity for that unit. So you wouldn't want to have a bigger caravan than that. It's just not capable of cooling an area that big. So it is really for smaller, compact vans.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, unless you wanted to run 2 units, which some people do with rooftop units as well. If you wanted to run like an under-bunk down in the kids' end and then have a rooftop further up in the van for the main living space or something like that, it could be a good second aircon. The other big pro to it for us was because we had the Truma hot water service and heater, as well as the aircon, all of our heating, cooling and hot water all ran through the same little control panel, which is a bit of a side benefit. I wouldn't...
It's like being all Apple or all Android, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. So that was kind of just added to the convenience. But yeah, it was a good little unit. The other downside I found was cutting holes in the floor wasn't something I was a huge fan of. It does have to have some reasonable sized holes in the floor to vent through the floor, which is something to think about. It didn't actually let much dust in. I don't think it really let any dust in at all, but if you are going to do some really deep water crossings, it'd be something to think about. But I don't know, like floors in caravans are pretty high these days. Unless you're doing some pretty serious water crossings, it probably isn't going to be an issue. So look, would we do it again? Yeah, I'd definitely consider it. Like I said, I'd have to be done at the manufacturer at the build time and planned into the build. So excuse the noise in the background, there's people parking up their caravans. Yeah, look, it'd have to be, for me to do it again, it'd have to be done at the build time. I wouldn't do it aftermarket or DIY again, and it'd have to be for the right size and sort of layout of van to be able to do it as well, because yeah, it's not going to be perfect for all types of vans.
Yeah.
Say hello to our new neighbours. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, yeah, look, I would consider doing it again, but it's not like a have to have it, or definitely wouldn't do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say my only other thought on it is you have to turn it on before you need it. So it takes a little while to kick in. So normally when it's hot, we just wait till it's hot and then turn the aircon on. With the Under-bunk Sophia, it does take a little while to cool down the space, and I think because we were at its maximum capacity, so it worked better for us if we turned it on half an hour before we thought we were going to need it, and then turned it off earlier.
Yeah. Thanks for jumping in our video. Whoever that is behind us.
We're surrounded.
It's a constant struggle of filming YouTube videos. you think you got a place all to yourself, or you find a nice little nook to go and have a chat, and the next thing you know. Anyway, something else we did on the last van was what I would consider to be a reasonably large off-grid power system.
At the time.
At the time.
They're getting huge now.
Power systems quickly go out of date, but at the time it was a fairly significant power system. So it comprised of 600 amps of lithium batteries, and it had 1600 watts or 1.6 kilowatts of solar on the roof, and that fed through a couple of different chargers, and we had a 2600 watt inverter. So it wasn't like these days something that you would sort of say is like this extravagant system, but definitely up there as far as, particularly in the solar department, as far as a Caravan goes.
And especially in terms of rejuvenation, like having that much solar up on the roof, it was pretty much, the design was get as much on there as you possibly can and sacrifice everything for it.
Yeah, and look, there is definitely, and we're part of it, there is a big trend to go bigger and bigger and crazier power systems. But with this last build, I mean, we've just been in and had a look at the guys building our latest system at Caravan, where they're putting it all together. We're going with Victron for the next system, spoiler alert, and we're also going 24 volt. So something a little bit different there, but we'll talk more about that when we pick up the van and we've used the system for a bit, what we've got and why and all that kind of thing. But it's not something that we just, I guess, went out and automatically went, yep, we need the biggest, baddest, most ridiculous power system you can get, because there are downsides to having a big power system. So firstly, let's talk about some of those, because I think the pros are a little more obvious.
Absolutely.
But the downsides, I mean, cost is obviously going to be one of them. I mean, the cost of these systems is getting cheaper and cheaper as far as what you get, but like we said, they're getting bigger and bigger and more wild. So I don't think over the 3 vans that we've done, the power system's actually gotten that much cheaper, because we've just gone bigger and bigger every time.
Yeah.
The other big one is weight. I mean, batteries are still heavy, although lithium's a lot lighter than AGMs back in the day and things like that. It is still heavy. So
are the solar panels.
Yeah.
Which is something that I underestimate each time. How much would a solar panel, a 200 watt solar panel?
I think they're like, I'm sure someone out there will correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think they're like 10 to 15 kilos, somewhere there per panel. So, I mean, our last van had 8 of them on the roof. So you're well over 100 kilos.
In solar panels.
Just in solar panels.
Massively adds to your tear weight.
And that's glass panels, which you kind of got to have for efficiency. You can get lighter weight ones, but they don't tend to work as well. So then you're trading that off. But yeah, look, weight is a big consideration. So you don't want to be dragging more weight around than what you need. We did a whole video and actually a whole series on, there's a couple of videos you can go and check out if you want to know how to work out how much power you actually need for the way you want to live and the way you want to travel, because there is a fair bit to it. It's certainly not a case of just get the biggest system that you can afford. Solar, yes, get as much solar as you can fit and as much as you can afford, but you don't necessarily need as much battery as you might think. We definitely have pared back, I guess, with our next van, the amount of battery we were going to go with, just because we just thought it's kind of like you'd have a bit there as backup and as in like an emergency, but look, it wasn't necessarily something we'd use often. Then it'd be a lot of weight we'd be carrying around for that time. So they're probably some of the things to consider with it, but there are some big pros to having a big power system.
What would you say were the main pros to going huge amounts of solar and decent amount of lithium?
Yeah, so big power systems have a few pros. I mean, the main one is just travel flexibility. You're not tied to needing powered sites. It allows you to stay off grid for longer most of the time, and you just got that flexibility. But it also allows you, when you come to build a van with a bigger power system, you've got the option to delete gas, which was a big pro for us.
And we did toss and turn about this for a long time, but for us it meant one less resource that we had to manage, and also another huge pro to not having gas internally in your van is the venting and the regulations around building a van with internal gas.
Yeah, particularly when it comes to dust ingress and things like that. Just delete vent, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I guess one of the other big pros is cooking outside with gas is not convenient. Wind is just something that we have to deal with a lot. So look, just being able to go full electric, it simplifies your resources, and diesel heating these days is bloody fantastic, way better than gas heating. So being able to do diesel hot water and just have power for cooking and things is awesome. But there are some downsides as well with electric cooking and being fully reliant on power, and that is even with the biggest power system, and even with 1600 watts of solar on the roof, you are still relying on solar, and you still do need that regeneration from solar. You don't have as many backup options, so you are not
It's not foolproof.
You're not bad weatherproof. Yeah. You're not bad weatherproof. You're still going to have to keep an eye on your resources when the weather's bad. But the beauty of it was that when the weather's good, with the old system, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted and it didn't really matter. And it allowed us to do things like the dishwasher, the desal, all these sorts of things were in our mind as well. And for us, we run, a lot of high power equipment to do the YouTube channel and video editing and stuff as well.
Yeah.
But overall, look, power system does, for the way we travel and what we do, a big power system does make life a lot easier. And we've definitely noticed with this van, having less solar in particular, has made travel less easy.
Yeah, we definitely have to be more on top of our logistics, and we've definitely stayed in more caravan parks in the last 6 months than we have in the last 4 years. I would say, summing up, my thoughts on power systems are as much solar as you always possibly can. Lithium, watch the videos that Simon made about working out how much you need, but regeneration is more important than storage. I would consider having gas outside the van, but I would not have gas inside the van.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Do you agree?
Yep.
Anything else you want to add?
No, that sums it up. All right, let's move on.
So in our last caravan, we installed a reverse osmosis desalinator that could effectively take seawater and turn it into fresh drinking water. I don't know anyone else that's done a desalinator in a caravan before. I think it's been done, but we certainly couldn't find anyone who'd posted anything online about it when we went to do it in our caravan. Now, the big pro to a desalinator is obviously the fact that we can create drinking water from seawater. But there are a lot of considerations and things that you need to be aware of if you're considering doing it in your caravan. And interestingly enough, not that much interest in it when we first posted about it. And then we sold the caravan and suddenly everyone wanted to know how the desal went and thought we didn't use it that much. We actually did use it quite a lot off camera. We didn't film every time we used it, partly because no one seemed that interested. So I would say that if there is anything content-wise that you guys want to see us do more of, let us know by leaving a comment below, because it is the best way for us to get feedback on what you guys want to see more of and what you want to see less of. But back to the desalinator. Basically, the big cons or the big things to consider are how you're going to get seawater to the desalinator. Now, like I said, we installed it in our caravan, and that's because the caravan had the power system to run it, because they do use quite a bit of power. But it is going to mean that there's going to be a challenge to get the seawater to the desalinator, and that's the big thing you're going to have to think about. Now, not just is it that you have to get the caravan near the water to be able to draw that seawater into the desalinator, but you also need calm water. Obviously, at a massive surf beach or something like that, it's not easy to get a good draw of seawater without getting sand and silt and that sort of thing churned up into it. The other big consideration is where are you going to be traveling, because obviously the desalinator is really only useful on the coast, but more specifically, it's only useful in places where you can get that access to the seawater. So where you can get down to the water's edge with a vehicle. So I better just grab that bit of.
Righto, we'll just put out that little bushfire.
Right, now as I was saying, I was originally planning on using boat ramps and things like that, but with a caravan in tow, it just wasn't that practical. So that's a big thing to consider. The other consideration is, like I said, the power. You do need quite a big power system to run it, but it is pretty efficient for power. The system, in theory, was capable of generating 80 litres of drinking water per hour, but in effect, it really was normally around the 50 to 60 litres an hour, and it drew around 80 to 100 amps. So I roughly worked it out, it was about 1.5 amps at 12 volt per litre of water, which I didn't think was too bad. And with the power system we had, often we were at full charge at midday or 1 o'clock, and the power that our solar was generating was effectively going to waste. So it was a good way to utilise that power. The other big consideration is just the size of it and the space and the weight. Like everything with caravanning and travelling, size, space, weight, it's all a consideration. It's not that heavy. It probably weighed about 15 kilos, the whole system. And look, it didn't take up that much room, but you do need to install the membrane, which is about 1.2 metres long. So you will need to find a space for it. Now, the solution to a lot of those downsides for me would be to install it in a vehicle. For us with a wagon, not that convenient to install it into a wagon, but if you've got a ute canopy or a truck or something like that, an American truck or an MPS truck, but even just a Land Cruiser ute or something like that, being able to put it in the back of the ute, in the canopy, would be a really good solution, as long as you've got enough power in there to run it. You'd probably want a couple of 100 amps of lithium at the very least to be able to run the system, and you need a 2000 watt inverter as well. But that would then allow you to be able to, to run it from the vehicle, go down to the water's edge with only the vehicle, generate the, convert the seawater into fresh water and bring that fresh water back to the caravan using a bladder or something like that. Now, what we ended up doing was transporting seawater with the bladder back to the van, but your yield from 100 litres of seawater, depending on the salinity of the water and a temperature of it and a whole range of factors, but on average, we might only get between 10 and 20 litres of fresh drinking water from that 100 litres. The most we saw was about 30 or 40 litres. So there is some definite considerations or downsides to it. And look, if you're going to go and travel a whole heap of deserts and things like that, it's probably not worth considering. But if you do a lot of coastal camping, travelling up and down the west coast is where it particularly shines, where we utilised it mostly last year. South Australian beaches, some Queensland areas and things like that. To be able to get that seawater converted to fresh water is pretty awesome and does extend your off-grid stay significantly. So look, all in all, if I was going to do it again, well, firstly, it did work. That's the main question everyone's got. Does it work? Yeah, it did work really well. The whole unit cost about $5,000, so quite a significant investment. It did utilise a Karcher pressure washer for the high pressure side of the system, which was pretty handy to have a pressure washer along for the ride for a whole range of things. But yeah, all in all, I would do it again, but I would probably install it in the vehicle, or at the moment I'm looking at portable systems. You can do portable desalinators. The downside there is just the cost. They're significantly more expensive than an installed unit like the one that we ran. But yeah, I'm definitely looking at doing it again. Again, it will depend on where and when we're traveling and things like that. But overall, I thought it was really cool to be able to do. It definitely was a head turner on the beach when you're pumping seawater into your caravan or into your car. Yeah, look, it's something to consider. Like I said, if you're going to spend a lot of time on the coast and in areas where you know you can get good access to the seawater, I'd seriously look at it. I think it's a really good way to be able to carry less drinking water.
Okay, swing away table leg. So in our previous van, we DIY installed one and we opted to not have the telescopic table leg. So the main pros for the table are just a much better range of movement and that creates more flexible living spaces. So for us, you know, we can push it to one side, we can have it in the middle, or you can completely remove it and then you put it on the bed or outside somewhere and you've got a whole new living area space. The other main pros to this table leg are that it is much lighter than the telescopic table. Like, I'm going to say, I think off the top of my head, it was about 10 kilos lighter. Like, those telescopic table legs are really heavy and it's much cheaper. It's like a couple of $100. So another great pro is that depending on your seating arrangement, it can make it much easier to get in and out, especially if you've got kids. There are a few cons. One is it's not as sturdy, especially if you've got multiple people at it. So it does have a little bit more rock in it than the telescopic table leg. You probably will need to reinforce it at the mounting point, depending on your layout. We've been through two different brands of these. So we've trialed two different brands, and the Lagoon brand is far better than the other one that we tried, which was from Outback Equipment. So yeah, the Lagoon brand is definitely the one to buy for sturdiness. Other downsides to the Lagoon is that it only comes in silver. We really did like the black one. I think just aesthetically it looked really good, and it just sort of disappeared and wasn't a feature at all, which I really liked, but it is worth getting the Lagoon one for practicality, for functionality. So something else to consider with the swing away table leg is the size of the table itself. You will have to be mindful of that and how much that table weighs. So depending on what material you make that table out of, it might not work for you. So would we do it in our next van? We ummed and ahed for a little while, but only because I wanted a corium top, but it was going to be too heavy and the Lagoon swing away wasn't going to be able to hold the size of table we wanted. So we have gone with the Lagoon swing away, but with a lightweight tabletop for our next van, which I think is the best compromise.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say on the swing away table leg is that the benefits that you're going to get from it are going to be more noticeable in certain layouts. So in the hybrid that we've got at the moment, it's handy, but it's not a game changer as such, whereas in our last van with the L-shaped settee and just the way that the entry was in that van and where the bed was and everything, it was an absolute game changer. It freed up a heap of space and it was really, really noticeable. And a lot of people, when they first came into the van, noticed it and said, you know, look, it's so much roomier in here. Why is it so, it feels so good? And it's because we could push the table right up against the couch, over the top of the couch, and just freed up that floor space. So it will depend a bit on what layout you've got, how beneficial you think it is, but overall it is a really good option to consider. Well, there you go. That is our take on some of those big ideas or some of those different things that we did in our last van. Overall, we really miss the old van a lot of the time. A lot of the things we did to it, the big power system, which we're doing again, we're looking forward to that in our new van. Dishwasher would be nice, wouldn't it?
Dishwasher, I miss the dishwasher the most, to be honest. The Under-bunk aircon, could take it or leave it. I would pretty much only do it if the manufacturer was going to offer it at the build stage.
Yeah, that extra 200 watts on the roof is handy in solar, but yeah, it probably wasn't worth it retrofitting it. The swing away table leg, the hybrid comes with that standard, so we're going to run with that again. And then, yeah, I mean, desal, look, like I said, we'll probably I'd put it in the car, but we'll probably look at a portable system because wagon life, you know, it doesn't really allow for desalinators in there. But the jury's out on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely amazing when we were at the Ningaloo coast. We get that like fringing reef, beautiful water, easy access. That was the like sweet spot for the desal. Thanks for watching, guys. Next week we're going to be back exploring the Vic High Country.
Yeah.
And then we're picking up our brand new van, which we've spec'd, which we cannot wait to show you it. I am really excited for this one. It's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
And there's some, again, stuff that I don't think I've seen anywhere else.
Yeah, and we're really looking forward to showing you around the Vic High Country as well. We're going to go and test out the 76 in some of the steep country.
Oh God.
It'll be a bit of fun.
Wish me luck.
Until then, we'll see you next Sunday.
Thanks for subscribing, guys. See you next Sunday.
It's time for me to go, burn all bridges. All I know, I got lost along the way, fell between